Good evening, Dr. Council, my fellow classmates. My name is Trisha Tesora, and today it is my honor to inform you all of marriage traditions since the 1960s. Today, you will learn what the traditional marriage for each decade was and how society had a part in changing each role during each decade. According to Jackie Edwards, marriage can be traced back to as early as the Stone Ages, but the 1960s is where it changed drastically. Marriage in the 60s happened at a very young age. The average groom was about 23 years old, and the average bride was about 20 years old. As you can see in picture number 1, both bride and groom were extremely young. The idea of a typical marriage in the 1960s was based on the woman of being similar to the ideas from the 1940s and 1950s. This idea was to be the traditional housewife, to stay at home, cook, clean, and be at home taking care of the children while the husband was at work. This takes us to picture number 2, and as you can see, the wife was in the kitchen. The divorce rate was also low at the time. It was about 20% and not common back in the 60s. According to Coleman, interracial marriage started to grow in the 1970s. This is an interracial couple at their wedding in the 1970s. Interracial marriage was legalized in 1967, however, it was extremely frowned upon back in the 60s and 70s. The 1980s, the average age for marriage began to change along with the roles of the genders itself. The average groom was about 26 years old and the average bride was 23 years old. Divorce rate in the 80s was a lot higher than any other decades, and it was about 50%. The role for a couple changed too. Women were now starting to work and the men stayed at home to take care of the children, to become housemen. And as you can see in this picture here, the father is giving his children a bath. Mimosa described in their article that during the 2000s, same-sex marriage started to rise, which changed traditional marriage. In 2013, same-sex marriage was legalized by the Supreme Court. And that takes us to the last picture here, was a couple that was married same-sex. It was not based at the lifestyle that one parent would stay at home while the other one was at work. It became based on the fact of what each individual wanted out of a relationship, whether they wanted to wait, get married earlier, have kids faster, or focus on their careers. They mostly focused first on getting their career started and made sure they were financially stable before getting married and having a family. The average age for a groom now during the 2000s was 29, and the average age for a bride was 27. Marriage has changed drastically since the 1960s. It began with couples getting married at a very young age, and the wife would stay at home and be the typical housewife, and the husband would work. The 1970s opened up a new idea to marriage, known as interracial marriage, and in the 1980s, gender roles began to change as well. The wives would be at work when the husbands would stay at home with the children, and divorce rates were extremely high during this decade as well. The 2000s opened up a whole new picture as well to marriage, and that was same-sex marriage. Couples now waited to get married. They wanted to make sure that their careers were a go and that they were financially stable to have a family. Thank you for all being here today and listening.